that podcast out. And I also adopted Nick's Canadian out. So if you think that's weird that a Norwegian has a Canadian out, then that's why. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, learned so many things from you. And also, if you need to get in touch with me for any reason on Power Pages or Power Platform related topics, please reach out to me on any of the social platforms. I think I'm the only one that's called Ulrikke and do Power Platform and Power Pages things, so you will be able to find me. This is a session that I did in Vegas together with Nitish, which is who is a developer in the Power Pages design team. We'll also look into branding and the design studio, and then we'll look more into advanced styling. So if you're not familiar with styling and the basics of that in Power Pages, then this is the right place for you to be. And feel free to raise your hand and ask a question. I see that there's something in the chat that I haven't seen. Starts with, I will disappoint you, and end with AI does not compute. Yeah, hey Nikita. Nice. We'll see. Here's something with you that I've been working on for 15 years. And this is my site content creation process. When I start a new Power Pages project, this is the process that I go through every single time. And I started my career as a SharePoint developer back in the day doing intranet branding. So this is what I started developing this even back then. Because intranets and websites and portals and apps, they usually all start out the same way with a blank canvas and a base, a framework, a design framework, if you will. And then we fill in the different details as we go. So this is what my process looks like. When I start a new site, I always start with the logo and the favicon. Then I move on to fonts because I'm a big font nerd, and I feel like fonts really put the identity in the branding or the styling of your site. Fonts are so important. Then I look into the colors, which are also very much a part of the identity, very much also tied to the logo. And usually there are brands, the company that you work with. But sometimes we have to create these ourselves. And that's when AI is very handy. Because even though I've worked on implementing user interfaces and designs on websites my whole career, I'm not very visually powerful. I'm not a very visual person. I'm not create great designs. I'm not a good designer that way. I can implement anything under the sun with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but I could not win a design competition if my life depended on it. So that's where we can use AI tools, for instance. Once we have that base in place, we move to the header and the footer. We look at the main navigation, maybe the top bar when you have the search and your logins. And then the page layout. We look at what are the different kinds of pages that we need to be able to show the content and get the message across that we want to communicate here. Maybe we have some articles that look one way. Maybe we have a products page that look at like another page. Maybe we have an event page that has another look and setup, and we kind of identify those and the patterns that they follow and make page layouts for them. Then we fill in the information, that's the pages. And then we fill in the content box, the component. Maybe you have to create a custom component for one of your pages. And it kind of gets just more and more granular from there. So I'm curious to see, can you guys raise your hands and stuff? Are you able to do that? Has anyone worked in a perfect, there you go. It lights up. I'm so happy. I got you up in the other screen on my corner here. All right. So any of you guys ever worked in the kind of the similar pattern or with a similar process? Does this sound familiar to any one of you? Or is this very new? Mm? Yeah, I have to do this a couple of times already with the project. Everybody. Um, okay, but a lot of you, this is new. Um, so who here knows what a favicon is? And you don't have to tell me. It's enough to raise your hand. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, two people. Victor. Oh, Miranda, Aaron, Louise, I see you. That's very good. Um, we'll dive more into that later. Is there any other font nerds in the house? Is it only me? Ah, one more, two more. Victor. Ah, Nikita. Nikita, really? Aaron. Oh, with a surprised to Famicom that early in the process, though, says Aaron. And yes, I know. Um, it. You know what? It's a good point. It's very early. That also, it's one of those few things that will wow the customer, because when the customer sees that favicon, hear about the website, it's kind of the equivalent to when you make a model-driven app and you, instead of just using the default icon thing that you get when you create your site, you actually take the time to choose the right icon or put up custom icons for in the navigation and in the different places in the model-driven app. Same care. It's in the details, right? And so it costs us so little, and it shows good care, and your customer will love it. Um, Miss Miranda, I know, but the new Microsoft font is really, really, really cool, though. So yeah. Before we get even to a blank canvas, we have to choose our template, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because this will have a huge impact on the end result you have. The different starter templates and the other templates, if depending on which template you use, the theme engine will apply differently. It will be different for the different templates. They're not built on the same theming structure. So it's one of those know your beast kinds of things. Usually I will start with a blank canvas. I used to work only with the partner portal because that was the beast new. But and that's as easy as it is. Comes to brand, I think choose a template that you're comfortable with and learn that well. Will save you time in terms of branding. But also try to look into the more of them. The more templates you look into and kind of investigate and fiddle around with, the more you'll learn in terms of branding and web development if you're new to this. And that kind of goes for everything that you want to learn, right? So if you want to learn about Canvas apps, create all the template Canvas apps that you can get your hands on in your environment and break them. That's the best way to learn if you're a kinetic learner. Just pick it apart. Because then you'll learn so much. And that goes for branding with Power Pages as well. To talk too much about copilots. And the reason is very simple. I don't use it a lot because today it doesn't do what I want it to do. It doesn't do it well, and it makes a mess. And that's the truth. But it will only get better if we use it. And that's why I always have a sandbox where I try to do what I want it to do to see and give feedback. And we talk to Microsoft often, and we know that they look into the telemetry. So if Copilot doesn't help you, give it a thumbs down, and if it actually helps you, give it a thumbs up because they look at that telemetry. So that's what I do in terms of branding and styling. It can create your website for you, and it can apply the theming that you want on. Seems to be a limit of how creative it can be. It really doesn't grasp the whole theming the way that I would want it to. But it's a good way to start. So that's for sure. So it kind of gives you a head start. But if our existing website as a template, then it kind of gets the identifying colors wrong. And until it gets that right, we really can't use it for that. So I'm looking forward to it being better. And I try it every so often to make sure that I keep on top of it. But still, I find that I have to go in and make a lot of changes afterwards. It will also help us create pages with layout and content on what kind of site you want, and that is great. But also there's the limitation to how many different kinds of layouts it creates. And try this a lot, the same things, the same layouts and the same content kind of appear very often. So that tells me that the box that it has to draw from isn't very big. But I'm keen to see that being evolved for page and make that form look great. You can make it look slick and modern. You can make it look corporate and very tight. And that does a very good page specifically. You cannot expect to add another page with another form and that styling will be applied automatically. That you will have to make sure that then you have to make sure that you grab that CSS and make that more broad and global so that it applies to all forms. So you actually have to know, and I guess you've heard this before when it comes to AI and Copilot, you have to know what you're doing in order to be able to make AI work for you in a good way. Because you need to be able to check its work and correct it if it gets it wrong still. So it's up to us as professionals to use it and to guide it and to tell it when it's wrong and to applaud it because we want to be polite to AI. That's a very good idea. When it does things right, and so that the generation that comes after us will be able to use it without having the knowledge to check its work. So that we'll just swiftly go through the demo that he showed at in Vegas, and this will be a recap of what images and text, so I don't have to go grab stock photo images or .com. Raise a hand, all this used Lorem Ipsum .com before to put dummy text, right? Miranda, Jose, yes. It is also supposed to be able to give you a color theme. I feel in my book that this is not really working that well. It does create a color theme and you are able to apply it to your page and it's very fun as a demo. In my book, this is accurate yet. You can also have it suggest content for you, rewrite it and make it shorter, longer, and things like that. But that's also mostly for typewriters and testers in my book at this point. But also very, very good if you're not confident in writing text. This is exciting to me. The introduction of Google fonts. They expanded the font library. So before you were able to choose, I think it was 10 different fonts you could choose from. Now it's up to 30, and those are the 30 most used fonts in Google Fonts Library. Google Fonts Library is a free open source place where you can connect your site to a font, and it will be added to it is added to all the portals to begin with. So it's very easy. And you can also choose to use another font from Google Fonts if you want, but then you have to implement it yourself, and I'll show you how to do that later. Always starts prompts with Copilot, can you please? Victor says, and also I find if you tell it that it's an expert, then it really wants to show you how great it is. So that's a hot tip for me. And I also heard from someone else that if you tell it that it's May, it will outperform because May is a very busy time. It's springtime. So it feels like it's very important to help you and it will perform better for you than the next person that did not tell it that it was May. Also, imagery. This is also something to your site, and it's free, and you don't have to check the license, the creative licenses for it. That's very good, and it's been there a while. Styling option. You know that this person discovered that you can do transitions. This is the equivalent to in my book. Rounded corners, shadows, overlays, all very fancy styling elements. But usually this is something you want to be consistent across your site. If you want corners on your pictures, you will have to make sure that you have a CSS file that states that all images have rounded corners and that it's 20 pixels, for instance, or 10. To do that for all the images across your site in this way does not make sense to me. I'll be brutally honest with you. I think sometimes Microsoft kind of invest in the not necessarily the best areas, the areas that where we actually need the most investments, and this is one of those for me. It's good as a play around and fiddle in the front end kind of thing, but it doesn't make sense for any big Power Pages project to work with this design and styling this way. But it's fancy and cool, and it looks great in the demo. So that's where they're at it, probably. You can now add styling to both sections and the different layout sections, images, also not buttons yet, I think. It says here video design, image design, and there's a lot of other styling elements coming here because they're kind of reusing the same template for the different products. The different elements. So that's very good. Drag and drop, that is something that we wanted and needed, and it was amazing to see that it finally arrived in October. And this is probably my favorite when it comes to styling, the list design styler. This is very cool, and I love to see this pop up in my Power Pages sites. So, any questions so far in terms of what I've shown you? We do have 1 hour, right, Victor? Aaron says perhaps an apply to all button coming from these styling options. Yes. Or so in the beginning, we want to add the identity markers. That's the first thing that we're looking for when we establish that. And on the image you see here, this is a portal that we use internally at Itera. Every fall we go out, and probably you have some of the similar things in your companies. We all go off to a resort somewhere. We have meetings and workshops and what we call lightning talks to help each other with gaining experience and tell each other about different case studies that we've been doing and customer works and all of that. And then we party and have fun. So this site is actually only used once a year, and it's for that event. So this is where we have all the information about the hotel and how to travel. You can submit your lightning talk when upfront, and we can vote for the ones that we want, and we can also then, once we get to the event, we can use this to sign up for the different lightning talks. You'll also see who you share rooms with, and you can update your personal information and so on and so forth. So the first thing that I did when I had this site was that I opened up a blank site. I added a new blank template site. And the first thing I did was I clicked on the header, and it allows me now finally to add the Atera logo in the header as a picture. I can upload it directly from here. And I think that came around in October sometime. And that's very, very good. Now, what I also want to see here is being able to add that favicon as well. That would be awesome. Because if you want to do that, this favicon right here, then you still have to go back into the portals management app, the model driven app that comes with Power Pages, because you cannot add to the Power Pages management model driven app and into web files folder and create a new web files, upload that favicon as a file. And that is exactly the same that you have to do if you want to use your custom fonts. So in Atera, as you can see here from this picture, we have very cool fonts. So this, I don't know if you can see my marker, but this Hobby, this font is very special. And that's something that our design bureau created only for us. And so to be able to use that, I have to add the logo, the font file to my web files, and then reference that in a CSS later. So that's also how you add the fonts. Now going back into Design Studio, choosing styling, I set up my color palette. I choose the different brand colors that we have for Atera. I see in real time how they apply to the website. This is pretty much familiar to you, I guess. We've all been in there and fiddled around with it. And this is how, when I talked earlier about the different templates, and I said colors will apply differently across different templates, this is what I mean. So depending on the template you've created your site by, and third-year colors will apply a bit differently across your site. And so that's when it's a good idea to know your template well. Once you have created your color palette and you've chosen your different fonts, you hit save, and then you can click the 3 small dots and you can choose Manage CSS. This allows you to upload a CSS file. I call mine atera.css, and once it's uploaded, it could be empty if you wanted to. You can make it with Notepad++, for instance, which is my favorite script programming tool, if you can call it that. And once it is uploaded, then you can edit it through the Visual Studio in the browser editor. And I must say, now Nick has heard me say this so many times, when I saw that Microsoft was investing in making Visual Studio Code available in the browser, I thought, oh my Lord, who will use a script editor in the browser when we already have Visual Studio Code as a desktop tool? And then I had to eat my words, because ever since they launched that, I haven't opened Visual Studio. I haven't downloaded a portal since that became available. I use it every single day, and that's the only place I'll go. I've stopped downloading portals now. Sometimes you have to eat your words and go back on something. And this is one of those occasions for me. So here from here, you can choose edit code, and you can then see this CSS file. You can see the favicon, you can see the font files, and then you can also go and dive into all the other web file templates and page, not just that, code. Yeah. So this is kind of the styling that I applied to make that header so big and wide. There are some styling necessary, because often you have the header for most of the Power Pages templates are designed around a header that is very wide and narrow and thin, but ours isn't. Ours is a bit different, and I also wanted it to scale so that when I view it on a mobile phone, it kind of looks different. And I thought maybe I'll just bring this up for you so that you could see what it is that I'm talking about. So let's see if I have this here. And also because I'm a developer, I hack this site always. So if there's something here that's a bit out of whack, never mind. And that's what you go. And then there you go. So I'm F, and you can watch the head. And then I hit this to the mobile phone. So I expand, and I want the header to be a bit smaller. I want the menu to collapse and expand like this, and also for it to be responsive this way, so that when you view it on the mobile phone, it kind of still looks good. And if you want to be able to do that, you still have to know your way around CSS. The Studio Designer will help you as much as it can, but it's still limited in terms of what you can do for that kind of thing. So to know CSS if you want to work with a website, and I feel that's fair. If you want to build websites, you need to know a bit about web development. If you want to make apps, you need to know a bit about app development. That to place where that doesn't apply. So this is why the styling here in the CSS, I have a logo wrappers there on the width of the page. So that is one little neat hack that I learned way back when that I still use in my projects. That's just a header tip from me to you. And there you go. I actually have the images to show what it looks like on a mobile and also otherwise. And don't you just love that red panda? Oh, I feel like that red panda some days. And this slide is about content. So reusable content components has been on my wish list for forever for Power Pages. And this year we got it. Now use web templates as components, meaning I can create a web template that holds one image to the left, a header, some content, a little text here, and then a button. And then I can reuse that code across my whole Power Pages site, not doing anything else, but just sending it the URL to the picture, the text that it should display in the header, the body text, and then also the link and the title of the button. And then these cards, if you want, will look exactly the same in across my whole site. And the customer, as it will one day come into my office and say, Ulrikke, now I want all of those images to have rounded corners. And then I can simply go into the web template, into that source code component, and I can add rounded corners to this image, and it will be applied across all the different cards. Now that's the power of reusable components. And that's why I also feel like when you use the Copilot to add styling to a form that you cannot reuse easily, then that's kind of not showing the new users the best way of working as a web developer. So I want Copilot to come to that place where it teaches us how to be better web developers, to use common web development patterns and be smart or styling and branding. So this is also one hot tip for me. I wonder if we could reuse this somewhere, then make that component into a web template, add that manifest file and reuse it. Okay. across very nicely to the pro code part of Power Pages development. Because, and this is, wow, this is 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, we finally able to use the portal CLI to, and we could upload it to repo. We could have the whole GitHub code. I'm losing my word. It's late night here. The full code source control. That's the word that I was looking for. And also that enabled us to use something called SCSS, which is a framework around CSS that allows you to write formulas and use variables and kinds of more developy ways of working with CSS. And so that's what I did for a lot of the big projects that we do with complex designs. We use SCSS. So this is a portal that I downloaded. This is still the Atera site. I downloaded to my local machine. I added a folder for SCSS, and then I can break my CSS up in different smaller files so that it's easier for the next person or the other people on my team to find the styling that they're looking for. Because you've all looked into those big CSS files, right? Hands up, who's ever had to scroll down a million pages long CSS file? Yes, Nick, Victor, and not a lot of others. Lucky you. But this is what it could look like in a big project. You would have one humongous CSS file that one developer created his way or her way. And then you go in there and you can't find what you're looking for because you're looking at the headers. The styling for the header should be fairly high up, but that designer that created it, he put it way down to the bottom. And so this way of structuring the files like this makes more sense in terms of finding what you're looking for in terms of styling. It all compiles down to one CSS file in the end, though, that you upload to your Power Pages site, and suddenly you can have a site that looks something like this. That doesn't look like a Power Pages site at all. And that's kind of the thing that I've heard across, throughout my careers, especially working with SharePoint intranets on-prem back in the day. How can you make my SharePoint intranet not look like a SharePoint intranet? We don't usually do branding that heavy anymore, but I still hear that for Power Pages. Wow, was this made with Power Pages? It looks so different. And anything, and I mean this, anything that you can make in a WordPress site in terms of design and this kind of branding, you can make with Power Pages. You just need to know what you're doing. Yeah, so this is the pro code part of it. This is Visual Studio Code in the browser, which is, like I told you earlier, one of my favorite things these days. You can add your JavaScript directly into the code. I'm not going to go too deep into this because I know that Franco and Victor, they showed a bit of this already. The CLI is amazing. And this kind of brings us to the conclusion of this presentation today, because I have left a little time for questions for you. But I also wanted to share with you that I made a blog post that goes with this presentation. So if you find that it was a bit fast, it was a bit quick and dirty, she was all over the place, well then, lucky for you, you can go in and read my blog post, and you can get through this content in your own pace. And I also have a low code Power Pages ALM blog post that is relevant, because we all want to make sure that we are also. In the bottom corner, you see my blog post about how to add favicons to Power Pages. Now, I will give you one hot tip about favicons. Back when I was starting out as a web developer, that's too many years ago, it's to mention. We could add to as the icon in the browser, and your customer would be happy. These days, it's a totally different ballgame, though. You need to make sure that you have images that work as icons on mobile phones. So when someone visits your Power Page, sure that icon is not 16 by 16 pixels. You want to make sure that that looks good. And that is also favicons these days. So if you look into that properly, like I should have done and have postponed for a year, it's a Norwegian site where you can search and look up anything under the sun in terms of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and more. I use it as a rule book. And CSS tricks. If you want 5 and Bootstrap 3.5 that we used to have are different. We get a lot of new components, but they also are built very different from scratch up. So make sure that you update yourself on the Bootstrap content. Also, want to look at SPSS. Questions or session was more about showing you